The St. Louis Blues are 3-2-0 to start the year, and so far it's been the young players that have led the way, like Jake Neighbours and Jimmy Snuggerud. They've really produced the most for this team. So that really begs the question here early in the year, will the young players lead the Blues this season? Can Jimmy Snuggerud make a serious run at the Calder Trophy for Best Rookie of the Year? Will Jake Neighbours have a career year, maybe score 30 goals? And then on the other side of that coin, you've got some other young players, particularly like Logan Mailloux, who are struggling to start the year. Should we be worried about Mailloux and any of the other young players, or do they need more time to settle into the grind of the full season? We're going to talk about all that and more today on Note News. Welcome into another episode of Note News. It's John and Alec back with you as always, and we are a St. Louis Blues podcast. We go live twice a week talking all things Blues, and Blues had a big win over the Dallas Stars last night, so we're going to talk about that, talk about some of our main takeaways to start the season through the first 5 games, and then move into talking about the youth movement that's kind of happening right now in St. Louis to start the year, so it should be a fun episode. We have lots of fun episodes. We'd appreciate if you would follow or subscribe wherever you are on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. And you can follow us on socials as well, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. We'd love to engage with everyone over there. But thanks for tuning into this one. Alec, you were yet again at the game last night, and you broke the curse. For a minute there, I thought you might be the bad luck charm for the Blues at home, but we broke through that barrier and they got the win. It was a fun one. How was the game?
Game was awesome. Finally, it was great to see a win live
Yep.
after some really bad performances at home. It seems like they're starting to settle in, starting to get that structure back, which we'll dive into here. But environment was once again electric. It was absolutely rocking in Enterprise Center. Blues fans have been showing out. Really impressed by that. And yeah, the season is sort of back on track. Getting 2 games over 500 to not just hover would be really nice. So having that win over Chicago would have been really, really nice. But we are currently tied with the Dallas Stars in the overall standings and actually have the tiebreaker as we won last night over Dallas, meaning that the Blues are in a divisional spot right now. So they're here and not messing around. So let's get into the discussion. But first 5 games, there's been a lot of ups and downs. I think there's a lot to break down here.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of an understatement. But yeah, as far as last night's game goes, uh, the Blues won 3-1, of course, to improve to 3-2-0 on the year. Jordan Kyrou got the Blues going with a goal in the second period, assisted by Braden Shen. That was a pretty one. It was his first of the year. He went sort of left side blocker, really snuck it in on the far side, which was really good to see him get one through already, or finally get one through. I think the Blues are going to need him to lead the team in scoring again. And so to see him hopefully get the monkey off his back and get his season started in earnest was good. So we'll see how that situation develops. But good to see Kyrou on the score sheet. Snuggerud kept it going also in the second period with his third of the year, assisted by Vucinovic and Tyler Tucker. And then in the third period, Mikko Rantanen scored got to admit, a pretty nice goal. And then Pius Suter scored an empty net goal to really put the game away. That was a pretty bluesy goal, I feel like, just in terms of the effort, diving for the puck and just sort of slapping it down the ice. That was exciting to see some puck luck go their way, especially at 6-on-5. So great effort from Suter there to close the game out. But yeah, as you said, they are 3-2-0 now, 6 points, and tied with Dallas in the standings. So they are in a good spot as we stand today, 5 games in. Obviously, a lot of hockey to be played, throughout the rest of the season. But good that they are keeping up with some of the better teams in the league so far. And as you said, the season to date through the first 5 games has had a lot of ups and downs. Obviously, a really disappointing home opener against Minnesota, they got shut out and had a couple stronger games on their Canadian road trip, followed by just a really rough one against Chicago. If let me start with this question: If they had, I mean, obviously, if they had won the Chicago game, they would have, they'd be 4-1, and we'd be feeling excellent right now. But if they had even lost like a 3-2 game or something like that, would we be like, would we have as many? Not that we're super concerned, just like per se, but would we be talking about this team like that was so up and down after 1 week if it had been just a closer game against Chicago?
Yeah, I think that's really the key is the way that they lost their two losses were absolute blowouts that
Yeah.
they just completely shut down. A shutout and then allowing 8 goals in a single game, I think makes you a lot more worried than it would otherwise. So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. The bad has been really bad, and that's been concerning. But they've seemed to starting to turn it around and have some really big individual performances that are carrying this team to 3 wins so far.
Yeah, for sure. And just from a team perspective, I think when they're on, they look like one of the better teams, I think, in the league. It's just a matter of staying consistent there. I mean, like so far, they're top 10 in expected goals percentage. They're eighth at 53%. So like it's not like uh, they're looking horrible all the time out there, right? It just seems to be a consistency issue with them. You look at some of the other big stats. Corsi percentage, they're top 10. They're actually sixth in the league in that metric. Fenwick percentage, which is unblocked shot attempts, they're ninth. So it's not that they are like stumbling their way to 3-2. I feel like I think it's been a three pretty solid wins. And like I said, when they look good, they are on. So that's one of the big takeaways for me. It seems like maybe if they get some of the puck luck going their way, they could really take off. I think the quality of the hockey that they're playing when it looks decent or even great, is up there with some of the league's best. So that's one of my big takeaways through the first 5 games. Uh, Alec, what do you have through after again the sample size is really small, and until we get through the first month or so, results are going to skew pretty heavily game to game. But so far, it's looking pretty decent for in my eyes. But what are your thoughts 5 games in?
Yeah, I think 5 games in, what I've learned is that they're a good hockey team on the cusp of being a great hockey team, but not there yet. And I think that they can get there in season, and that's the
Yeah.
biggest difference to me. That's the biggest thing. Um, is that they have these moments of really good play and have a level of consistency in like the Dallas game that we saw. But then when you look at Minnesota and Chicago, the two losses, especially in division losses, that consistency wasn't there. So I think if we can get Jim Montgomery to turn this team around a little bit, excuse me, and get that consistency, then they can become a great hockey team. But right now, I think that they're a very good hockey team who can beat most anybody on every given night, given that they just took it to the Dallas Stars.
Hmm.
And the Canucks are winning games too. They're not an awful team, so they're competitive. And I think they're in the mix right now, but I think there's still another step to be taken before they become something great.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree, and I think this is sort of my next takeaway. There's a group of players that are doing a good job leading this team, um, and have looked pretty good, pretty consistently. We're going to talk about some of them today. Obviously, Jimmy Snuggerud and Jake Neighbours are a couple names to pay attention to. I've also been really impressed with Colton Parayko, and really Pius Suter. I think he has had an excellent start to his St. Louis tenure. I've really liked seeing him in the Blue Note. I think he fits in really well, and I think he fits into the style that this team wants to play, and he's been effective so far. So I've really liked seeing that from him. Jordan Cairo, I think, has been away from the puck, looks good. It's just it's just been a matter of, like we said at the top, he's got to get the scoring going. Glad that he started that last night. Hopefully that continues and multiplies. Um, but I think one of the things that needs to um, turn around if the Blues want to, like you said, become a consistently good hockey team, consistently, hopefully even a great hockey team, they're going to need some more contributions from some key players, and they're really going to need some of these guys to turn their seasons around. It's been a pretty inauspicious start to the season here for a few guys. I mean, namely Robert Thomas, I think, is the big one. You know those like hockey stat cards that everyone likes to see and overreact to, um, game to game. They're really funny. But one thing that is concerning is that Robert Thomas has pretty consistently been at the bottom of those. Just means looking at the sum of his contributions as an individual and from a team perspective when he's on the ice on both sides of the puck, he hasn't looked good. He's kind of been not noticeable or even noticeably bad at times, and so that's been really disappointing. I would lump Holloway in that same boat. I think he's had a better game than Robert Thomas has had so far, but he hasn't really done much else. And then I'm gonna put Broberg and Falk in that tier as well. I want to see more out of these two, and I think they have had some issues regarding who they've been paired up with, and maybe as Montgomery finds a pairing structure on the blue line that he likes, and they can find some consistency, this should turn around. Um, but I want to see more out of particularly those four. You could also say like Texier, Bukestad. I mean, we're going to talk about Mailloux later today, but those four, Broberg, Falk, Thomas, and Holloway, those four need to be leaders for this team. Maybe Falk a little bit less so, but those three, Thomas, Holloway, Broberg, we've come to expect big things from them. We've expected those three in particular, along with Jordan Kyrou, to really lead this team in terms of production. Colton Parayko maybe is in there as well, but he's done his job. So that's what I really want to see. That's another a big takeaway from me is that those core pieces aren't really doing their job so far. Once they do, I have faith and confidence that they will find it, that they will turn it around. Like with a guy like Holloway, who is really like a skilled goal scorer, I feel like he just needs one game to really, turn it around. Like if he puts up 2 goals next week, I have, in one game, I have confidence that he can sort of ride that high and really, really settle into the season. I'm not really sure what to make of Robert Thomas's start, to be honest, but those four, particularly those better three in that quartet, I really want to see some better hockey from moving forward. And that's been a big takeaway for me. It's just that they have not really contributed like we expected them to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it really is the veterans here who do need to, as we broke it down last episode, who need to step it up. And Robert Thomas is um, kind of like, because I'm a Blues fan, I have to have a positive spin on this, but it's my reason for optimism about this team is that they're, treading water right now, staying above 500 and beating good teams, and they don't even have their best player going yet. Like once Robert Thomas actually gets going to the level that we know he's capable of, and leads this team to a new height, like to a
Mm-hmm.
new level, I think that there's a lot more to be unlocked, and that's when you can really see the season start to get going and the wins start to flow.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that was one of the big storylines last year is when Robert Thomas was injured. We were like, okay, if they can just tread water until he's back, uh, they have a shot, and they kind of did that, right? They did that, and he got back and had a fantastic second half of the year. So if they can just tread water for like, I don't know how long it'll take, maybe another few games or something, or hopefully he'll just start to turn it around next week. But um, if they can just, like you said, tread water, which so far they've been able to, then it should be all right once he's back in you know Robert Thomas mid-season form. So hopefully that'll get going sometime soon.
Yeah.
Any other big takeaways from the first five, or you want to go ahead and move on to our main topic of today?
I do have one more
Let's hear it.
discussion point is that I think that the goaltending has to be a little bit better. I think we saw a glimpse of it last night with Bennington almost getting the shutout. Rantanen broke that up in the final 5 minutes of the game, but Bennington had for 55 minutes a shutout against one of the best offenses in the league. But that's really the only, I think, stellar goaltending. I guess Hofer and Calgary had a good game too, but excuse me. Then you see what he did against Chicago, and so far, they've been using Binner and Hofer in a one-to-one split,
Yeah,
like every other game,
yeah.
and I'm not sure that that's I think Hofer is starting to take a step back from where he's been in his career so far, and so I'm it's not something that I'm worried about. I guess I should reframe that. But it is something that I'm monitoring is how they're going to deploy and use these goaltenders
Hmm.
because Binner's kind of on the top of his game right now, and Hofer the exact opposite.
Yeah.
But even then, Binner had a game where he allowed 5 goals against the Wild too. So
Hmm.
it's something I'm monitoring and could potentially hold this team back. But it's been good enough to get them 3 wins so far against some pretty good teams. And I'm interested to see how the deployment works out going forward.
Yeah, I got a couple thoughts on that as well, actually. So, I mean, we saw Jim Montgomery have a great goalie tandem in Boston, right? It was Linus Ullmark and it was Jeremy Swayman, and they were quite literally a 50-50 split. And they just went back and forth and back and forth. And it allowed both goalies to be really, really effective. But I think both goalies were starter quality, and so they were just sort of lucky to be in that situation. And um, I wouldn't be surprised if once Joel Hofer looks like he's ready, they went into something like that. But this year in particular, I think a big part of it is Jordan Bennington is going to be the goalie for Team Canada in the Olympics, and so he's going to have a larger workload come February than he's used to. And so I'm sure a big part of it is they're wanting Joel Hofer to get his reps in by the time midseason rolls around, and he might have to take on a bigger workload once Jordan Bennington is in sort of Olympics mode. Or after the Olympics, I'm sure Joel Hofer will probably be starting more games than Jordan Bennington for at least a little while until Bennington gets rested up. I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of the thinking here, and if that is how it shook out in a few months' time. But I agree. I think they can't really afford to ride a system like that and lose games. So if it does start to go south for Joel Hofer, I would hope that they would trim it back a little. But also, I think this team is good enough that if they were to let Hofer start more games, and he wasn't the Joel Hofer of 2023, 24, I think they're good enough to get into the playoffs still, as long as it's not just horrible. And you just want to make sure Jordan Bennington is ready for the playoffs. That's the goaltending goal for me. Is just uh, have it be good enough to get into the playoffs, and then once you're there, make sure Jordan Bennington is ready to go, because big game Benner is it's not many goalies you'd take in a big situation over Jordan Bennington. So there's some of my thoughts there.
Yeah, I'd say there are no goalies I would rather have.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, we got a great question from Rob in the chat that I think we should answer before we move on to our next segment. He asks, "Do you keep these lines together?" So this is a great question, and we saw after that pretty horrible game against Chicago, we saw the Blues try a brand new lineup. Um, Let me pull it up here. So, if anyone missed the lineup against Dallas yesterday, it was on the top line Holloway, Thomas, and Neighbours. Second line was Buchnevich, Suter, and Snuggerud. Third line was Joseph, Shen, and Kyrou. Fourth line, Texier, Bukestad, and Walker. Defensemen, they went back to Fowler, Pareko, Broberg, Falk, and Tucker. Paired up with Matthew Kessel this time. Kessel got his first game. while Logan Mailloux, who's been struggling, sat out. We'll talk about Mailloux this episode once we move on to our main segment, and then Benner in the starters net. So I would say it worked out pretty well for them, given the result of that game. But you saw it in person. You got to see sort of the whole game being played there in person. Alec, what did you think of these lines? Do you keep it together, or do you go back to something that the team is a little bit more used to?
I thought it was a fascinating decision by
Yeah.
Monty to put out these lines, and it clearly worked out.
Yeah.
And I honestly like I'd kind of be interested by keeping these lines for a little bit, just given how effective it was. You allow your guys who are hot in Neighbours and Snuggerud to play on the top line, and then Holloway, like, if Holloway were on any other team, he'd be a first liner 82 games in the season, I think. I think the Blues are just really deep right now and had a good thing going with the Holloway and Kyrou line.
Mm.
The one that is interesting is Kyrou versus Buchnevich
Yep.
on the wing. I think Kyrou is playing pretty better than Buchnevich right now. Um, and the other, I guess, another permutation I think would be interesting would be switching Suter and Shen, getting Shen back on that second line with Snuggerud. And then if you had Joseph, Suter, Kyrou, that would be one of the best defensive lines in the league. And I think there's a really interesting, which is what they actually had in practice, was Joseph Suter Snuggerud, or not Snuggerud, Joseph Suter Kyrou. Sorry, did I say Snuggerud earlier? My fault. Uh, Joseph Suter Kyrou is what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
All are plus plus defensive skaters, and they can kind of establish that identity of turning defense into offense. And maybe you elevate them to the second line. That makes for a tough play for Jimmy Snuggerud, however. So there's a lot of mouths to feed and not a lot of minutes to go around. But I liked what they did with the lines, and I would be pushing pushing the same buttons that have worked so far if I were in the coach's chair.
Yeah, I've got a few thoughts. I agree. Bumping Kairu down to the third line feels a little weird. But I think I was talking with you about this. I kind of see the vision, right? Bumping Holloway up, he's more dynamic. Bumping him up makes sense. Like you said, he probably plays on the first line for most NHL teams out there. But replacing him with Joseph, I think also makes sense. He's fast and he's a good defender. And so keeping sort of the overall style of that line intact, I can see that. I would say it's probably more of like a 2A, 2B in terms of like the quality of these lines. But nominally, it is the third line. So um, I do think Kyrie on the third line is interesting. But I would push back against splitting up Snuggerud and Suter. I think they've been really effective, so I would have to disagree with you there. I mean, not that I wouldn't be interested in seeing Snug and Shen once at some point, but Suter and Snug is working, and I would kind of want to keep that going right now. And unless they start to struggle, just keep rolling that out because they have been a lot more effective together than they have been apart. Um, Together, they've got an expected goals percentage of 65% and a goals for percentage of 66%. So the actual results are measuring up with the quality of play that they are looking at. So that's been really effective. I would keep them together, and maybe you could swap Buchnevich and Kyrou on that line and see how that works out. Um, but I I don't hate it. I don't hate what Monty rolled out there. But like I said, I think those middle two lines are it's more like two second lines in terms of um, the way they looked and the way they can produce. So I don't know. I would be curious. If I were Montgomery, I would keep it going. It worked against one of the best teams in the league. See how it works next week when you play, LA and Utah and Detroit, and see how that works out. So there's some good matchups to try and roll this lineup back out against. And I would hope that for a guy like Jordan Kyrou, like I said, I think that line is better than a third line or whatever. But he if he's thinking of it as a demotion, which I don't know that he should, but if he is, hopefully that can motivate him. And we maybe got a taste of that last night. He scored a goal. So um, I think I also mentioned this lineup looks like the type of lineup that you use to hold players accountable. Other than Robert
Hmm.
Thomas, who we said has looked pretty poor, I'm not. I mean, and I don't think you can move him off the first line. The potential is just way too great. Um, but this sort of like is rewarding certain players like Jake Neighbours and things like that, and holding other players accountable. So I don't hate it. I would keep it going, and if it starts to get a little stale, switch it up. But for now, I don't see any reason to.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, let's move on to our main topic for the day, which is talking about some of the young players on the Blues and their hot start to the season. Um, so, do you want to start with the good or the bad? I'll ask you that, Alec.
Let's start with the good.
Start with the good. All right. And in terms of the young players on this team, the good, you got to start with Jake Neighbours and Jamie Snuggerud. Just in terms of all players on this team, the good is coming from mostly these two. I feel like so. Jake Neighbours, Jimmy Snuggerud, having a really good start to the season. I'm just going to read through some stats here. Jake Neighbours leading the team with 4 goals. He's also got 1 assist. Scored 1 goal on the power play. He's got 1.93 individual expected goals, and he's also thrown around 15 hits. So he's been. Um, we talked about it last episode. He's been a real leader for this team in terms of setting the tone and providing some energy and some heart to this lineup. Um, Talked about, I think it was after game 1, talked about we got to get to the net front more. We got to establish a presence there. Guess what he did in the next game against Calgary? He did that. He scored 2 goals in the front of the net. So really, really like the leading by example we're seeing from Jake Neighbours. I think he's on his way to getting an A on his sweater. Um, and so yeah, that's been awesome. And then Jamie Snuggerud. Well, actually, let's keep it with Jake Neighbours. How have you? I mean, I'm pretty pleased that I took a flyer on him in fantasy. It's been paying off handsomely. Um, but what are your thoughts on Jake Neighbours to start the year? I mean, this was one of your favorite players a couple of years ago. He maybe still is. But yeah, thoughts on Jake Neighbours to start the year, and what are you seeing for him throughout the year? Do you think he can keep this up, and what kind of year do you think is in store for number 63?
Yeah. Neighbors has absolutely been one of the best players playing so far into the season, and the way that he's doing it looks a lot like his rookie season when he really broke out and kind of came out of nowhere as one of the Blues' top goal scorers. He looks hungry and he looks feisty. He's playing with a lot of heart right now, a lot of really physical play that makes me think that it's not just something that's lucky puck bounces. He's earning his looks and playing really well as just a physical like grinded out hockey player that every team really needs. Um, so I've really liked seeing that from Neighbors, and I think it can continue. I think it's maybe, my bold prediction of 30 goals is still a bold prediction. So I'm not sure if he'll get all the way to 30, but he's pacing for the right amount. And I think he's started off the season in the right way. So he's doing all the right things that you'd hope to see. Can he continue it? I think so. Like I said, the way that he's winning isn't just lucky puck bounces. He's playing physical and he's playing like he wants the puck more than the opposing skaters, which I think is something that isn't necessarily going around on the team right now. It looks like Neighbors just has that drive and that compete level more than anybody on the team, and that's something that doesn't often get taken out of a player.
Yeah, for sure. That's part of why we like Justin Carbonneau too. That's something I've brought up every time we talk about Carbonneau. Just it's really hard to coach that into a player, and so the fact that Jake Neighbors has it, and for that matter, has always had it, and his previous 2 seasons with the Blues has a similar energy, similar fight. So that's been great to see him continue that, but it almost feels like, at least so far, he's taken another step with that, and it's led him to be very effective. We had some concerns last year after his sort of breakout campaign. While he still looked good last year, it felt like maybe the league was starting to figure out his style, figure out his game. So that's a situation to continue to monitor how he is matched up, against throughout the season, and if they try to shut him down, and if they do, how he adapts to that, and hopefully it's something that he can sort of take in stride. But it's been really exciting, and I would say that so far your bold prediction of 30 for Neighbours is in pretty good shape to start out with. I mean, 4 goals through 5 games. You can't ask for a much better start from Neighbours than that. So that's been so great to see. Um, we talked about him as probably more so. I talked about him before the season as pretty solidly a third liner. I think is some of like the terminology that I used, and I said that with the caveat that you need a goal scorer on your third line. Um, but I don't know if if that's true anymore. Like, do you think he is now sort of a top line guy, a second line guy, at least with how he's currently playing, and for the next couple weeks? Do you think um, that he should stay at the top of the lineup there and see some more ice time, or do you think he um, maybe belongs a little bit further down? I don't know. What are some of your thoughts on that?
I think he's earned it, and I think they should continue to ride the hot hand for a little bit. I don't think necessarily that should be the entire season how it plays out, because I don't know that he's got the skill set you're looking for in a top liner. And I
Yeah.
think he can really be a weapon down on that third line, like playing with, maybe they do like Suitor Neighbors Snuggerud and get a skiller and some defense and sort of like a mix and match of every flavor of player down on the third line. But I think he's earned it for the time being, and should stay up for the time being. However, I think long term, that's when you're hoping guys like Kyrou Booch, or maybe promoting Snowgird again, or keeping Holloway in the top line, have all earned it more. But
Hmm.
for the time being, Neighbors has earned it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Um, Ride that hot hand, like you said. And then, as Matt in the chat said, he did a really great job defending his goalie against Chicago. Frank
Love to
Nazar
see that.
ran into Hofer, and of course they are like good buddies. So it's good to see him stick up for him like that. Yeah, I mean that's another great way that he is sort of leading the team, and I think I think something that we've seen progress over the past couple of years is, I mean, especially last year, Braden Shen is pretty much the heart of this team. Um, but something that I think we've seen develop is Shen has kind of taken Neighbors under his wing in that role, and I'm glad to see it sort of rubbing off on him, that Blues mentality and that Braden Shen sort of ideology of toughness and intensity and um, team firstness. I feel like so that's been really great to see from Jake Neighbors. I think it's rubbing off on him in a great way. So
He's almost like a mini Shen.
yeah, and it's a productive player.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if I said this. He leads the team in points as well with 5, not just goals. And he's only 23. I mean, this is a player who's not quite yet in his prime. So um, I think I wouldn't be surprised if there was a 30-goal season in there for him. He's he kind of reminds me of Zach Hyman in that way, in terms of the way he can produce. Obviously, Zach Hyman has probably a higher ceiling than Neighbors will, but just in terms of that style of production, I think there could be a lot left in the tank for Jake Neighbors as he continues to develop. Well,
Yeah.
why don't we talk about the other big guy in St. Louis, the other big young name that has been producing early this season? It's Jimmy Snuggerud, and I think in some ways you could argue that he has looked even better than Jake Neighbors. He's got 3 goals and 1 assist for 4 points, second on the team. He leads the team with 13 shots. He leads the team with 1.99 individual expected goals. That's just the quality of chances that he alone has taken have been the best. And I think there's a quantity metric to that too. So he's taken a lot of chances, and he's taken a lot of good chances. I think it was Sam who said, like, individual expected goals kingpin or something like that. Jimmy Snuggerud. Um, Anyways, he also has generated 9 high danger chances by himself. I mean, those are chances that he alone has taken. He has 5 takeaways that leads the team, and his on those are just individual metrics. When he's on the ice, he looks really great as well. So, of players with more than one game played, he leads the team with a 57% goals for percentage, a 62% expected goals percentage, a 38 scoring chances for per 60, and almost 20 high danger chances for per 60. So when he's on the ice, the team is buzzing offensively. Is basically what that means. They're taking a lot of chances. They're getting some quality chances. Matt in the chat said it. He's been arguably the most consistent forward for this team. So this was your pick for Calder Trophy. How you feeling about that to start the year? And yeah, what have you liked? What have you seen out of Jimmy Snuggerud?
Snuggerud has been absolutely awesome. He looks so confident and is just playing so hot right now. It's absolutely awesome. I like the way Bessa Jim Montgomery put it. He's just a guy who electrifies the line that he's playing on and electrifies the players that he's playing with, and makes the skaters around him better. That's the mark of a truly special talent. And I think Snuggerud has shown everything that we need to know for him to be declared as a special talent. He can score goals. He can make plays. I mean, I think his playmaking is so underrated and is such a big part of his game that doesn't get talked about. And his release is dirty too. Like he's got the full package, and just playing with his hair on fire right now. Um, I think that confidence is the biggest thing for me with Snuggerud, is that he doesn't look intimidated on the ice like a guy maybe like we'll talk about in Mailloux does. Snuggerud looks like he belongs because he's playing with such a strong head and a strong heart, and he knows exactly what he needs to do, and he doesn't overcomplicate it. He does what he needs to do. He makes it simple and gets it done. And that level of mental preparedness is something that can never be taught to a skater. They kind of just have to have it or develop it. And Snuggerud it looks like his time in the NCAA like really prepared him for the NHL level, and he is right now almost leading the way in the Calder conversation. So, um, yeah, Snuggerud's awesome, and he is right now making the players around him better, which is the sign of a really special player.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's been super exciting to see. His shooting percentage too is like 23% right now, which might not be super sustainable. But like you said, the most surprising thing is that he has never really looked like he isn't ready. He has never looked, and this goes back to last year when he was in a playoff run, and then in the first round of the playoffs against the President's Trophy winners in a really heated series, he never really looked like he was out of his depth. It just always felt like he was ready for the moment and ready for the show. And so I think the way he goes out there and plays, the way he composes himself off the ice, um, it's been super exciting to see. And um, that well-roundedness to his game is something that I've been pleasantly surprised with. Some people in the chat talking about his passing ability and his defensive ability. I didn't quite see those things coming. I knew he was a great shooter, but I didn't know he's got all these other tools that were pretty close to NHL ready. So that's been awesome to see. And then, like you said, I think he's probably in the small sample size is one of the ones leading the way for the Calder race. I think he's been better than Demidov to start the season, who is expected to win it. He's kind of the favorite. The only other players I would say that have looked really good, Matthew Schaefer, obviously the first overall pick for the Islanders, is already the best defenseman on that team and looks pretty good. I think Alexander Nikishin has been pretty effective in Carolina, but it's hard not to look effective on the Canes right now. They've got a great team system. So I think those are some other names to pay attention to. But I think Jimmy Snuggerud is off to a great start. And I think if he keeps it up, he should be in a pretty good position to make that race at least very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Um, any other young players? Because we talked about some of the veterans last episode. Any other young players that you want to highlight on the good side of things? I mean, not that there's a ton on the team. I mean, Matthew Kessel had a good debut, or a good season debut anyway. Last night wasn't on the ice for a goal against. There was only one goal against, but still. Tyler Tucker had a good night. Yeah, any others you wanna shout out?
Um, I think, uh, no, I think that's good.
I'll just give Tucker his flowers a little bit more. I think he has, despite some despite being paired with Mailloux a lot to start the season, I guess that pair wasn't very effective together. But I think he's had a pretty good year so far. So shout out Tyler Tucker. I've been after
That's
not
true.
really after not expecting him to make the team last year, last season. We were kind of talking about Matthew Kessel was going to get that spot. It was Tyler Tucker though, ended up claiming that spot. For my expectations being that low for Tuck, um, I've been so pleasantly surprised, and I feel like he's starting to really come into his own. I could see him holding down a bottom four spot for a while, to be honest. So yeah, pretty pleased. He's got a goal and two assists already. Um, okay, well, why don't we pivot now to talk about some of the more disappointing performances so far? There's only two that I really want to talk about. Do you want to talk about the obvious one first?
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of discussion out there in the bluesiverse, the Blueniverse, whatever you want to say, um, about Logan Mailloux's start to the season, which has been pretty poor, and I don't think there's any disputing that. It has looked rough for sure. He has not really settled into the NHL quite yet, but he's 12 games into his career, and so it's very early. It's been bad. It's been bad. I'm gonna try to find some of the stats here, but while I'm finding those, Alec, what are your thoughts on Mayu start to the season? What's going wrong for him? Do you think?
Yeah, Mayu is a guy, unlike um, Snuggerud, who just doesn't have that confidence, and it looks like every time he touches the puck, he doesn't know what he's doing with it yet. Um, and he definitely still is showing signs of the upside, I think, in some of his passes and his ability to find negative space on the ice, but he doesn't really know how to convert those and how to make something of it. His hockey IQ is probably the biggest area of improvement that I would like to see from Mayu. Um, but that's something that always with every skater, not just young defensemen at his age, that's like the thing that takes just experience to learn and to grow,
Mm-hmm.
to gain that hockey IQ to because you've seen it before, and Mayu just hasn't. So I think he's still doing the right on the right track. And I think that one thing I said about the trade was that it's probably going to take time for Blues fans to really come around on this deal, and clearly it's going to take a lot more time than we would have hoped for. But I think there's still a lot of good in there. It's just he right now has been playing super scared, and it's affecting his play and it could affect his development too. So you'd like to see him maybe score a goal or two to get that confidence back, and then just not be atrocious. But right now, I think it's been a rough watch with Mayu because of his confidence and because of his low hockey IQ, which is to be expected of a young player.
Yeah, for sure. I think it seems to be a kind of a confidence thing with him, and just not really, like defensively speaking, just not really looking ready for NHL level play, like you said. Um, I did find some stats just to sort of paint a picture of how rough it's looked for Logan Mailloux. But keep in mind that this is really skewed because he's only played 4 games, and the Blues allowed quite a few goals in some of those games. So he leads the team in a bad way in goals against per 60 with 8.21. Pretty rough. Expected goals against per 60 with 4.43. And then the really surprising, and I guess maybe not surprising, but the really the one that stands out to me is the high danger chances against per 60. And these are on ice stats, all of these. When he's on the ice, what the team is allowing, uh, there's 22 high danger chances against per 60. So that's not sustainable. And when you're giving up that many high danger chances, it's bound to um, it's your numbers are bound to look pretty poor, right? In like the plus minus or in the goals allowed and things like that. He's just giving up way too many quality chances when he's on the ice. So that is rough. But Alec, let's sort of talk about, um, should we be worried yet? And I think the thing that I'm worried about is not that he won't find his game. It might take time for sure. Like he's a young guy. He is 12 games into his NHL level career, and so like it's going to take time. Defensemen like take the longest to develop of skaters. I mean, goalies take the longest. Defensemen uh, take a longer time than forwards to really like fully develop, and so it's gonna take time. He's pretty young and inexperienced. Um, I'm not worried about him getting there eventually. What I'm worried about is letting all of this, letting this poor performance, and letting more so the reaction from Blues fans like get to him. I'm not sure like what kind of guy he is, to be honest. Like if he is paying attention to all of that, if it's something he tries to tune out, I don't know. But like I think Blues fans, and they might not be alone, but over the years, Blues fans like to narrow in on one player, and for a while it was Jordan Kyrou wasn't doing enough, and some still say that. Justin Falk has been kind of the face of that in recent years. In the past couple of seasons, he's the player that fans want off their team. I'm really hoping that like as a group, Blues fans don't write this guy off already and talk about wanting him off the team because I think he's got a lot of trust from the system. Uh, it's hard for me to say one way or another, what kind of guy he'll be. I'm pretty optimistic about him. I think the profile is an exciting one, but we knew this going in that the ceiling was pretty high and the floor could be kind of low, and so we're seeing some of that floor level performance so far. Um, but I think my general stance on this is kind of preaching patience, and this is just gonna take more time. Whether he does turn out to be not a great player, or whether he turns out to be a really great player, we're not gonna know for probably like another couple of seasons, I would say. So it's gonna take time, and it doesn't help that Zach Bolduc looks really great in Montreal to start the year for sure. It sort of makes it seem like it's a more one-sided trade, but we knew he was ready, and he was like a 2020 guy last year, and we knew, we knew that we were giving up a great player, but it's like
He had
gotta
a
give
lot
to
more of a
get.
runway before,
For
too.
sure, for sure. He had the experience in the blue system that like allowed him to blossom into an effective player. So again, I'm just preaching patience on this one. But what are your thoughts on Mayu and his development so far?
Yeah, I'm hopeful, tentatively, but definitely it's still going to take time. Like, I think we probably won't see, I don't want to say a lot of good, but I think we probably won't see major steps until at least December at the earliest. And even then, um, beyond, like, I, it's tough to say. But I guess what I feel with Mayu is that it's going to take probably, several months or even like his first full year of playing before we really know who we've got in Mayu. And that's a tough world to live in for someone that you're giving consistent time to on the night. But that's what taking on a young player in a risky contract is. And I want to talk a little bit now about the upside of this move, because um, I think given how bad everything looks, we can kind of forget the why they made this trade in the first place. And with Mayu, to find a player of his caliber or of his potential, first of all, would never come at a cheap price, anyways. Maybe Zach Bolduc could have been a little bit too much to give up, but the Blues didn't really have a lot of pieces to other pieces to cash in, anyways. I mean, maybe Otto Stenberg, but I doubt Montreal accepts that trade if that's that a unknown player for an unknown player, basically. But anyways, that's hindsight. With Mayu, to find a defenseman of his upside on the right side is not just hard, but nearly impossible in the NHL right now. Uh, so many defensemen are coming out as left-handed shots, and the left side of the Blues defense for the future and for the present is kind of set. Versus the right side, you've got Broberg and Pareko. Um, or sorry, Falk and Pareko, excuse me. Uh, but Falk is on the way out, and Pareko, who knows how many good years he's got left. So you kind of, this is like, I think in a few years we'll be looking back on this trade a lot more positively, just because the way that the team is set up right now, they could have a serious hole in the defense coming up in a few years' time once that Falk contract runs out, and once Pareko is inevitably not able to play top pair minutes anymore. There were no pieces to behind them to fill that hole. I mean, you've got Adam Uticek, but is he able to be a top four defenseman? Maybe, hopefully. And now Mayu gives you another chance at that. So it really was a long-term position of need and a really savvy move to acquire something at a long-term position of need. It's just, again, it just hurts so more seeing what Zach Bolduc is um, consistently doing right now. But Mayu will get there. It'll take time. And a lot of the guys in the Blues organization still really like him. Jim Montgomery still really likes him. Doug Armstrong still really likes him. And we got a comment in the chat from Rob saying, yeah, or Matt and Rob saying Chris Pronger, former Blues captain, and kind of was acquired in a similar deal. Really, really likes this kid and his ability. So he's still doing a lot of things that are convincing the Blues brass that he's got the potential, and he fills such a big position of need as a big defenseman too. That he's kind of the prototypical of like built in a lab what you would be looking for as an ideal defenseman, as a good size on the right side and has the tools to become a great player. You can't find that in hardly any player around the league this time. So I'm still hopeful. I think it just feels really bad right now, but I still really like this kid's ability and what he could become.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree for sure. I think the sample size is small enough and the upside is high enough that I'm still feeling optimistic. Yeah, patience, patience, patience. That's what I'll say. The other guy I want to talk about as a young player who is struggling a bit to start the year, and this one's a little bit more like unexpected, is Dylan Holloway. I think he has looked a little bit rough, and I'm even less worried about him. I think he will find it for sure. But just looking at some of his on ice metrics, I think he's towards the bottom for forwards when it comes to things like goals percentage and expected goals percentage and stuff like that. So um, you've been to all three home games now. Do you think is there something you're seeing with Holloway so far? Because I think the season he had last year really raised expectations for him. And maybe if he has a kind of two steps forward, one step back kind of thing, like over the next few seasons, maybe this. And again, this is so early. Like we want to say everything with an asterisk because as the season progresses, situations can change a lot. But it's like one concern you had going into this season was maybe Dylan Holloway takes a small step back. Are you seeing that in sort of the quality of his play on the ice? What are your thoughts on Dylan Holloway to start the year?
I think the step back I was worried about was just because his first season was so amazing, and I think we are seeing some of that, but I don't think it's anything to be worried about with Holloway. What I'm seeing from him is I think he's trying to do a little bit too much. I think he's playing too much with the puck on his stick. I'd like to see him pass it a little bit more or go back
Hmm.
to a little bit more playmaking in his game, because I think right now he's just has all the confidence in the world in kind of a bad way, in that he feels invincible and hasn't been necessarily um, producing because of it. And I think he needs to switch it up. But he's still playing with that very physical brand of hockey that the Blues love and that he loves to play. He's still throwing around a ton of hits. So I think that side of things has been really good. And I think defensively he's getting there. I think he's shaking off some of the rust still. So I think he'll end up being a good defensive forward on the year. I think it's just a rust issue with him for the time being.
Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty good assessment. One thing I want to see for him is, something we said a lot after the first game or two is just getting to the net front more. I feel like that's a big way that he was able to generate some offense last year. So offensively speaking, I want to see him, pushing the envelope a little bit in that regard and really establishing himself, which is something he's really good at. Is as a physical, dynamic winger. He's very strong. He's very fast, and so he should be able to be more effective in that way. So that's something I'm paying attention to for Holloway. Again, not really worried about him. I think he's pretty much established as a top six winger for this team and belongs in that role for a long time to come, hopefully. And so, um, yeah, expecting him to turn it around. Just wanted to point that out as well as Mailloux. He's one of the younger guys that has had a bit of a rougher start to the year. But unlike Mailloux, has a little bit more of a track record to maybe um, earn our have earned our patience already. Any other players you want to highlight?
Um, I think those are the two main ones struggling, and then Thomas. But we've
Yeah,
kind of exhausted that discussion.
I guess you could throw Texier in there as well. I think but he's on the fourth line. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not.
he's a fourth liner.
Yeah, so nothing much to say there. Well, all right. Just to preview what the Blues have coming up. Hey, we asked for them to go. What did we ask for? 2-1, like 2-1 last week, um, and they did that. It didn't come
Yes,
the
they did.
way that maybe we expected it to, with a blowout loss to Chicago and then a somewhat dominant win over Dallas. But they did it. They did what we asked. So let's go ahead and set the bar again for this upcoming week. They've got LA at home on Tuesday the 21st. They've got Utah a couple nights later at home Thursday the 23rd, and then they'll travel to Detroit for a game there on Saturday the 25th against the Red Wings. What are you looking for this upcoming week? How do you think they'll do against these three opponents? I think it's a pretty good test. You've got another playoff team in the LA Kings, who haven't had a great start to the year, to be honest, but have been a good team for a while. You got the up and coming Utah Mammoth, and then you've got the stuck in neutral Detroit Red Wings. What are you looking for this week?
Hey, the Red Wings right now are like,
They're doing well.
yeah. Although I do kind of agree. I still think there's hot starts a
Big
little bit
picture,
of a
the
yeah,
Yzer plan is not really the
yeah.
Yzer plan is stuck in
Um,
neutral. I'll say that.
I'm looking for this team to stay more than one game over 500. So they have a not necessarily easy stretch of hockey, although the Kings right now are absolutely floundering, and the Mammoth are below us in the standings too. So I'm looking for another 2-1-0, or really ideally 2-0-1. If they can finally get a loser point, I feel like the St. Louis Blues have got to be the worst team in the league at getting loser points, and it really comes to bite us
Maybe so.
sometimes.
There might be
But
something
hopefully
to
not
that.
this year. Hopefully they can just take the divisional spot. But
Yep.
anyways, um, I'm looking for a continuation. I think there have been a nice bit of strengths of this team. I think the transition play and rush offense in that last game was a lot better, and I think the penalty kill has been kind of a strength so far.
Yeah,
So I'm looking for
80%.
those to continue. And if we can get 2 wins this week, that'd be fine. That would be great. I think this is a week where if you only come out with one win, though, looking ahead to the week following that when they're playing Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Vancouver again at home, that can be a week where you can sort of recoup some lost value. So I'm looking for a solid week of hockey. Have to win at least one game. Two would be ideal. And if it really where I would feel great about this team is if they can stay 2 games over a 500 points percentage, because standings don't really matter until Thanksgiving. But if you're not just hovering around 500, then it's starting to get serious about playoffs.
Yeah, that's some good expectations. I'll agree 2-1-0 at least, but I'll get a little bit more specific. I want to see them win the next two. I want to see at least a 3-game win streak. Um, just I think consistency is going to have to be the biggest thing that they find. Even if even in a loss, if they just look competitive, I think that's progress because in their losses so far that they haven't looked competitive, really. So I'll say I want them to win the next two, get a 3-game win streak going for sure, and then I mean, I think they have what it takes to beat Detroit. So um, hopefully they can tack on a fourth. But I think 2-1-0 or 2-0-1 is still an overall victory for this upcoming week. So should be a fun one. And then um, the following week they'll be closing out the month of October, and that sample size is gonna start to look more consequential. So we'll be here to break it all down, talk about the upcoming games, and react to whatever trends and issues and good things start to develop. So if you want to join us, we'd love to have you. We appreciate everyone tuning in this time, and we hope to see you next time as well. If you haven't already, we'd appreciate if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're like really close to 550, so help us clear that hurdle. Like this video, follow, rate, review wherever you're listening on audio. We're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And then you can follow us on socials, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod, where we post a lot of other great stuff. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next time, and let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues.